Yeah. So where do we start?
Um, so yeah, we could just dive right in. I figured it would be good to kind of just get an update on the situation with Iran and lead into any stock picks that you had for the week. I
Mhm.
could do a quick market breakdown too, but during the first phase, let's go ahead and just talk a little bit about where we're at with that the whole Iran situation, and how that fits into kind of like your timeline, like you were saying.
Right. What I just read, actually, I didn't have enough time to look into it, but apparently there was a F-16 shot down by the IRGC along with an A-10. Well, first of all, let's go to Trump's broadcast. I saw clips of it or whatever. I had to turn it off after a while, but like the uh, one thing that I noted in that's kind of surprised me, because I'm sure he has legal advisors telling him otherwise, but he like just the admitting to like war crimes. You know what I
Well,
mean? It's
he's
like,
tweeted directly about targeting civilian infrastructure and desalination plants and stuff like that, which is, that's a war crime.
yeah, yeah. But what was it? He quote, what was it? The uh, bomb them back into the Stone Age.
Right.
I don't even know if he knew about who said that, but as I said, like bombs away LeMay.
Mhm.
Uh, and, that guy was responsible for the firebombing of Tokyo and the firebombing of Dresden, which are like historical war crimes. Also, big proponent of bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And then later on, the administration had to hold him back from bombing the dikes that held back, the waters in Vietnam, because essentially because they had tunnel systems. The idea was if you just basically flooded the entire country, that the water would find its way down into the tunnel systems and essentially drown all of the troops that were in tunnels.
Mhm.
Right. Here's the problem: is that would have
Killed
essentially
everybody else too.
right, and in particular, the whole reason we were there were for the South Vietnamese in the first place.
Right.
Where it's like, but that would have hurt them just as much. So
Right.
it's like, yeah, it's that famous saying, like, why are we there? There was a famous general or colonel that was being interviewed by the media, and it's on tape. There's archive footage of it, and it's like, well, what, why are we bombing these people? And there's like a city on fire behind him. He's like, well, we have to bomb these people in order to save them.
Mhm.
And like this village is burning in the background. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, wait a minute. What? We got to set fire to the whole country to save
Short-term pain
the
for
country?
long-term gain.
Right, all that nonsense. So anyway, like that surprised me that like not just that he said it once or twice via tweets, but he also said it in his address, which he was, clearly reading from some sort of cue card or teleprompter. Somebody wrote some stuff for him to read, right, to address the nation. So it's like there, and I put that together with what I heard last night, where Army, uh, the chief of staff of the Army, along with a head general. I actually looked into this today. Uh, there's just a whole bunch of people in the U.S. military now that have essentially just been fired by Hegseth. Now the problem with that is, uh, it's they're saying that they're not gonna, say why they were fired, and we're just supposed to believe from what Hegseth says that like it wasn't due to the conflict in Iran, but like all of a sudden all these people are being fired
It's
and
just
he
really
has
convenient timing.
resignations. Yeah, right, it just
Nothing to
happened
see
to
here,
be
folks.
sure, right. Yeah, they just right now they figured the timing was right. So no, that's all clearly nonsense. So eventually I'm in order for their firing or resignation, like there's one again, somebody with a really solid steel pair, was Kent. And he that's the ex green that's the Green Beret guy who was head of counterintelligence in the Trump administration. And he did it the right way, man. You know what I mean? Like he, as far as like an example of what a real patriot and service member is supposed to do, that's the guy. And I told you my experiences being attached to the Ranger battalions, as operating as a standby soft medic for those guys. And it's interesting. I'd say about a third of them are just incredible psychopaths. They love killing people. And here's the thing is at least they're in our military. But what's interesting about that as far as like character goes is those were the same guys that would get in criminal trouble and stuff like that whenever they would be stateside. You know what I mean? Like the chief would have to bail them out because they would get in bar fights and all sorts of crazy nonsense. And when I was in Okinawa, those were the same sort of dudes that would end up like raping, poor Okinawan girls when they would get too rowdy off base and stuff like that. It was, anyway, what's interesting about it is I noticed working with them that you need like giga chads like Joe Kent in order to guys that do have solid moral foundations and will not compromise and take their oaths seriously and take their job seriously, right? Guys of high moral standing, but also guys like Anthony Aguilar, who's another Green Beret, who he was interviewed by Tucker Carlson. Those were the guys that I really appreciated working with because like they were, you have to imagine not just the strength of character, but just the mental and physical toughness, the unbreakable will that you need. Like you've seen me teach mixed martial arts, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
In
for
order
sure.
to run a sparring session with a bunch of pro fighters in there and stuff like that, and younger teens and kids, and you have to command respect.
Oh
You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like you're, but you also need to have such self mastery and self control,
Yeah, when I
right?
taught
Where you
when
don't
I had
let
the Muay
things
Thai
blow
gym
up
in
and get out of
in Melbourne, it's like when you have people of different skill levels and maybe different drills that you're running, and you have to parallelize that, across an entire gym, right? Not only do you have to have the organizational skills, but you have to have the sprezzatura, if you will, to be able to pull that off and be respectable, right? So that people listen to you.
Right. You have to, but right. So not just the confidence and the competence, but you need to, especially when you're running like sparring sessions and stuff like that. Tempers can get high when people are cutting
Sure.
weight and stuff. They can get, things can get out of hand. You need to be the sort of person that can keep a level head when everybody, essentially nobody else is, in order to have a firm and steady hand in order to direct things appropriately. And guys like Kent are the sort of guys that I worked with that I observed that greatly in. You could have about these like just raging testosterone, bully type, nasty, essentially in any other context, they would be criminals, right? And they're dangerous. But then you have guys like Joe Kent in a leadership position where they can direct and focus them in a productive way, right? What I'm trying to say is what's unfortunate about this process and why I don't like seeing resignations like that and people being fired is that's telling me that they're being weeded out of the decision making process
Right. So then you just have the bully
moving forward.
psychopaths who just want to go
Right.
bonkers.
That just exactly that don't have the level, the
The
the level
wherewithal
of debt,
to,
right.
yeah.
And unfortunately, when you have a system that seems to weed out or self-select against that, then you just have a system that just is essentially just out of control. That's rogue. Yeah, and what I'm concerned about is I think we're just probably going to see more and more of that. And what's interesting is it seems like the markets have, they've been, like I said, like I think they've been like incredibly complacent. Like the markets seem to be projecting onto Trump somebody that really knows what they're doing and has a plan, when all the evidence from my perspective, now granted my perspective may be different than other people's, but essentially what, as I told you, what I think is what's happened is he thought he was going to be able to move in, just take out the Ayatollah, and then come the markets opening on Monday, everything was going to be great.
Yeah, he thought
You
it
know,
was going
and
to be another Venezuela, but even that, like, okay, so you got Maduro, but that's just
right,
the
right,
beginning. You know what I mean?
right,
And
exactly,
there's still a long road ahead in just that theater, right? A little
exactly.
like Iran is obviously more detrimental to, basically the world, and that we're going to be feeling those impacts very shortly. We're already feeling them. We see them at the pump. The gas, the oil prices is, per barrel. We're hanging around $100, last week. All of a sudden, with Trump's address, they skyrocketed up to close to
It's
120. I believe it was 116 this morning. And so I can only see that pain being extended. I read a breaking news today where Iran was basically saying that they will never allow the U.S. back in Hormuz again.
interesting. Well, and one thing you got to say about the Iranians, especially so far, and what you have to give. One thing that I'll give the just if you look at the history, uh, when it comes to the Russians and when it comes to the Iranians in particular, just look at the history. When they say something, they mean it. They don't go off on rambling tweets or send out misinformation, or like when they say something, when you listen to Sergei Lavrov or Putin or the Iranian foreign minister, like, I mean, that's why, Trump being surprised at the closure of Hormuz surprised me, because it's like, dude, if you just listen to them, like they told you exactly what they were going to do,
Yeah.
and they follow through with it. For instance, anytime, like as soon as the Israelis went after the gas facilities, uh, the Iranian foreign minister and the IRGC tweeted saying, "Okay, now we're going to take out the Qatari gas fields." And what's interesting when you research into it, they followed through with what they said too, because the trains that they hit specifically for that natural gas were owned by ExxonMobil and I think a British corporation.
Mhm.
So not only were they just did they follow through with what they said, but they were very specific in what they hit, in it being specifically United States and Western backed corporate interests, right? And so far, they followed through with the same thing, going after, Amazon Web Services, Raytheon, so on and so forth. They're very specific about who they're going after and what they're doing, and they called their shots. And what's really, I think, sort of fascinating about the entire thing is they call their shots and they hit them. It's like
Yeah.
one of those things again where it's and what does that tell you? Where they're not only does that show confidence on their end, because it's nothing more embarrassing than calling your shot and missing the shot, but they've called all their shots and they hit essentially all the ones I've seen, right? So when they say something, they mean it, and chances are, if they're that confident, there's nothing we can do about it either, and
Well,
they
not
know
only
that.
that, but that doesn't leave much for negotiations, right? What's there to negotiate at this point? I mean, they're making over $100 million a day for just with mediating Hormuz alone.
Mhm.
So, what we were talking about earlier about how, oh, okay, you've been subjugated to these very constraining sanction rules, and now all of a sudden, gloves are off, and you're thriving, what's going to make you want to go back to that?
Yeah, no, nothing, and not just that, but again, anybody saying that like, oh well, they'll fall over if we just give them a push, or you know, they'll become supplicants to the United States once we apply pressure and all that. Man, I'm telling you, I've spent a lot of time in that area of the world, and
Yeah, it makes you wonder
it's
who is advising him on this, right? Like,
yeah,
how do you have that attitude? Because, I've worked in intelligence for a while. I understand kind of the game, and this is not new, right?
well, it's not just that, Danny, but it is different because, like, look, I'll tell you that the okay, Afghanistan was a very different theater than Iraq. Okay, here's why: is Afghanistan, they're very tough people. However, that's where you do get the illiterate, like goat herder populations with
Mhm.
AK, guys in sandals with AKs, like the stereotype, the
Right.
Durka Durka. That's actually where that, and I saw that myself. That actually does exist, right? Now, Iraq was a different theater in that, first of all, the people had a much higher level of education just in Iraq to begin with. Not just that, but what ended up happening was the Shia populations were being in Iraq were being trained by Iranians who were training militia in Iraq. And when you have that, you run into situations where you and when you look into the history of Iran in particular and the Shia positions and people and philosophy, it's a very different thing than the Afghans or the Afghani, right? The first of all, the Persians, like they go back 6,000 years of civilization, uh, and like in that area of the world, that's like where agriculture was first invented. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
Fertile Crescent.
So right, and exactly. And what's interesting is what we're starting to see happen and bubble up, especially now, is we're starting to see what we used to call the Shia crescent,
Mhm.
where you have the Shia philosophy and mores and organizational capacities as far as like militia and resistance movements start to pop up in that same region, which has its own poetry to it. But what I'm trying to say is the Persians, like their history is a deep. I mean, Arabic, like algebra. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? Like I said, like they have several average IQ points ahead of the U.S. citizenry. You know what I mean? They have a much higher literacy rate than we do. They're
probably
just
lower inbreeding rates too.
probably, yeah. No, it wouldn't
Like
surprise me
literally.
at all. What I'm trying to say is you're dealing with the stereotype that comes from is usually like that's more the Afghani group, I guess you could say, of the
For which
nomadic
some of those
herder
countries
folk.
have over half, 50% are inbred, right? This is just a
I
bit.
didn't know that, but
No,
yeah,
that is a fact. You could look it up.
yeah,
Some of them have rates that high.
yeah.
So in contrast, the Iranians, they're of a different genetic line too, right? So it's not
They're
even
Persian.
on
They're Persian,
exactly.
right?
They're Persian.
They're
So
not even Middle Eastern. They're
it's not
Persian.
even exactly. So it doesn't
Right.
even make sense to compare them on the same playing field.
Yes. What I'm trying to say though is these people are a completely different mentality, organizational structure with far different capacities. For instance, you have Afghanis with AKs and sandals, uh, running around in Afghanistan, but in Iran, you see they have hypersonic missiles
Right.
and all the just when you talk about even if we were to invade with 3 million troops, God, like the Iranians, it turns out, the IRGC is the group that taught all of the Iraqis how to make IEDs. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So it's like we're talking about people where just their knowledge of how to reverse engineer basic electronics and stuff like that, just that knowledge that came from that region was enough to cause roadside bombs and ambushes, and for somebody, some troop in Iraq to, go to pick up something and it blows up. You
Yep.
see what I'm saying? So, and we're talking, these people were super resourceful too. Like, we couldn't throw away batteries. We couldn't throw away phone. We couldn't throw away
Yeah,
anything
because any
electronic.
kind of device you could throw away, they would MacGyver a
Yep.
IED out of it.
Turn it into a bomb, and a very effective bomb. Now, what I'm trying to say is that was just the know-how that came from the region, let alone the pride and so forth. So it's like, if there's one, I'm just going to say, like, one people you really don't want to mess with, I would say, even my dad would tell you, like, his experience in the region, he's like, you don't fuck with the Persians. Like, you don't fuck with them, and you don't fuck with their religion. And he was about as warmongery, sort of bomb them back into the Stone Age as you could possibly get. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Even he was like, "Nah, you don't do that." And we're gonna see that. What I'm trying to say is, we're gonna see that, and it's surprising how long it's taken the markets to even come as far as they have.
Well, with
Like,
that, would you
like,
you want to get into some stocks? Did you have any picks for today?
yeah, well, yeah. I in
Sure.
particular, there's one that's still really low. Look up Permian Resources. I got Permian Resources about 2 months ago.
Permian Resources right here. Okay. Well, this has been on a solid uptick here ever since basically the turn of the year. We've just been
Mm-hmm.
on a solid rally. Just do some
Yep.
levels real quick. If you wanted to look for a dip, you'd be looking for 2010 or 1870. That's the 786 and the 618 Fibonacci level. But this looks like one of those ones where, we might, any little dip you could get would be a good one. Just look at this trend line. If we just this is the year, right? Just look at that. That's
Uh-huh.
you don't have to be a technical expert to see up
Real
up is
to see.
good. Up is
Yeah.
good.
Right. Up and to the right. Yeah.
Yep.
So here's my question though. Like, I'm not I never said I was like a trader or anything like that. I mean, I have investments, but I'm not like a technical trader or anything like that. I do understand geopolitics. Now, remember what I said long ago? When did I say we were going to? How long ago was it? When did Venezuela happen?
Venezuela, what was that? Want to say February?
Okay, 2 weeks after that uh, occurred. What did I say? I said we're going to invade Iran right after
Yeah.
that. And I said that because, of course, if you look at the overall systems level, if you're looking at securing energy resources, what's the first place you would go? Go to Venezuela, right? And the next place you would want to hit, as far as if you're the United States, you're trying to really secure all energy resources, you would hit Iran next, right? Now you can say that the thing with Israel and so forth, that they did influence the United States, that there's solid truth to all that. But what I'm trying to say is, just from an energy standpoint, if you're looking for the places to really grab a stranglehold, if you're the United States globally, right, it's going to be Venezuela, control that, again, and then Iran. Now, Iran is key strategically because, of course, because of their relationship with China and Russia in particular. Again, unfortunately for the United States, I don't think the United States, maybe this is part of the reason why they don't like China, Russia, and Iran, is because when you look at China, Russia, and Iran, those are sort of like persistent nationalistic civilizational states,
Right.
right?
Right,
to
and they don't
where,
have the globalist, globo homo mentality,
right,
right? Where you could just
exactly,
kind of, the
right.
consumerist just kind of stare vacantly into an iPad kind of mentality.
The,
I'm sure that's there, but they're very nationalistic and
right,
they understand that their culture goes back to basically the dawn of civilization,
right,
respectively.
exactly. So they have too much uh, history
Right,
as
that they're not going to let
civilization
themselves be pushed
states.
around by the banking system or the
Exactly.
LGBT mob or whatever.
Right, exactly. So you're not going to do, I mean, I guess you're not going to do with China and Russia what the United States did to Germany after World War II. You
Right.
see? So Germany is just sort of a pathetic husk of what it used to be, not just economically and but just period.
Yeah.
Like it's not even really a country anymore. It's a vassal of the United States.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
strip
Now,
mall.
right. Now we tried now here's the thing is wonder why so many in the United States or the globalist uh, hegemons, if you will, hate Putin so much. It's because Putin, the United States did sort of start to get that rolling in Russia. Okay. Now, the problem with that is Putin came in after 1999 and sort of fixed up the place and rehabilitated it and sort of gave a new resurgence to Russian stability, nationality, and just nationalism. Where even Putin, over time, has said, you know what, we used to admire the West culturally and all this other stuff, but screw it. Like we're okay with who we are now. It's sort of like an ex, you know what I mean, that you used to be involved with and your lives were tightly intertwined. And then, they break up and then the other person like doesn't like to see their ex like do well in their own, you know, sort of go their own
Or
path and their own
conversely,
way.
they want the
But
best for them, but they just see their life going like this.
right, right. Yeah, so you could argue that Putin even sees that in the West.
That's what
They're
I'm
like, I
saying.
used
He
to
sees
admire.
like
Yeah,
this and he's
yeah,
like, "Come
yeah.
on, man. Like we used
Right.
to we
So
used to
you're
have a thing
seeing
here."
exactly. Yeah, so you're seeing that sort of relationship, bifurcate, right? But what I'm trying to say is part of the reason why they've had it out for Putin so much, because when you really think about it, it's like, oh, if we just got rid of Putin, all of a sudden, everything would be better in Russia. Putin, Putin, Putin. When really, if you look at it, Putin's actually very moderate when you compare him to the rest of like the what is like if you compare Putin to like Medvedev, right? Like Medvedev, like he's out for Western blood. He would like to nuke Ukraine if he could. Putin is not. He doesn't play like that. He's
But
too
one thing I
like.
can say is that
Uh,
he's actually for all the saber rattling on the part of the West, he's been extraordinarily restrained. I mean, there was
that's what I'm trying to say.
one
Right?
instance where
Putin.
Biden, I remember, was outright calling for regime change in Russia, which, if you look at their
Right.
doctrine, is call for a nuclear response. Like technically, he could have. I'm just saying, if he was the warmonger
Yeah.
that everybody's trying to make him out to be, and
Yeah.
oh, he's going to conquer all of Eastern Europe now once he gets Ukraine. If that was the case, he's had a lot of green lights via his own protocols and doctrines to do some nasty stuff, and he hasn't.
Well, no, what I'm trying to say with that, Danny, if you know anything about what's been going on in Russia and what their culture's like now, uh, the what their society's like now, uh, Putin actually has been holding the wolves back
Right.
for like there are a lot of people even in his administration that are in the Duma or whatever, where they want to like they want, for instance, they could, if they wanted to, they could assassinate Zelensky. I mean, do you think that the Russians aren't capable of that? Of course they are. But
Yeah.
because Putin is too much of like a diplomatic moderate, if you will, and he's not, you know, a really nasty warmonger. He's not what they paint him to be. he actually has to appeal to his own people to like, hey, listen, let's not commit war crimes.
Right.
Let's he likes predictability and stability. That's honestly Putin's very, very vanilla as far as that goes. I personally think, I mean, if I were in Putin's position, I would have let the dogs loose a long time ago. But you know what I mean? I'm not, again, maybe that's because I understand the West better than he does. But
Mhm.
what I'm trying to say about this is when it comes to energy, I knew that we were going to go after Iran, and the there's Iran is significant geopolitically because China has the One Belt One Road, okay, and also if you look back through his historically, why that's such an important location is it's key to trade routes between Europe, its location with the Mediterranean, okay, and its location via Hormuz in the Pacific, right?
Mhm.
So that's sort of like a key hub where it's a cross section of numerous trade routes.
Correct.
So
So speaking of which, I have a chart of Exxon pulled up. If you look at this nice dip that happened, we're looking at like a 50% retracement of the Fibonacci's on what is this basically the past 2 months, which just
oh, it dropped big time. It
yeah.
dropped.
So technically speaking,
When did it drop? When did it
so
drop?
this drop was Tuesday, let's see, the 31st of March, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of I think ever since the gas prices really started to permeate the economy, and we saw maybe some impact of demand in terms of, once the sticker shock, if you will. That's my
Mm-hmm.
guess for this. But do you have any kind of thoughts on if this is what you would consider a good buy, or if you still think that this has room to fall?
Um, honestly, like I said last time, I'm asking what that time duration was because remember what I said about Exxon, right? Is they have a lot of assets in that region.
That's right.
So does that timing how does that coincide with the war? Is what I'm trying to
So,
say.
I mean, like I said, this is Tuesday, March 31st, basically roughly a
Right.
week, like not, close to a week ago. So I don't necessarily think that that was a direct cause of the war, else we would seen that a little sooner. Like
Right.
my personal guess is this is just the prices of oil kind of impacting, the demand.
That's what I'm
Likely.
trying to get at though. Is like, wouldn't that be bullish for Exxon though?
Well, what I'm thinking is, if there was some kind of pullback, in terms of demand, this isn't going to go away, right? So that's why I'm thinking that, if you're looking at this stock, which, this is one of my favorites, and
Yeah.
I'm on record about the fact that I bought it during COVID, right? So it was that like low lows,
That's when we talked
but
about it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So this is one that we have on on stream actually talking about this.
Right.
So. I'm always a fan to load up more. So my personal guess is that this 160 thereabouts, that's a 50% retracement. I consider this a good buy. Maybe if you're a little bit
I would,
skittish,
yeah. The only reason I
158.
would be skittish about it, honestly, is what we would have to do is we'd have to look at what percentage of Exxon's assets are in that region, right? Because if this is going to unfold the way I think it's going to unfold, those assets are done.
Right.
Because here's what I see: Iran is not going to give up. Okay, anything the United States does to escalate, okay, Iran's just going to reflect that back on Israel,
Mhm.
to the
No, they
Gulf
have been
countries in
a
the
power
region.
plant
Right,
for a power plant,
right.
desalination plant for desalination plant.
They're doing a little more than eye for an eye, though. What they're doing is they want to make the costs heavier, so it's sort of like bouncing back, but with a greater impact. For instance, like you take out one of our power plants, we'll take out five of yours. So
Yep.
that's how that, which makes
Asymmetric.
sense. That makes sense to me. What I'm trying to say though is, uh, when you game it out, okay, so Trump, it's going to take a, I think, okay, first of all, I don't see Trump backing down, period. Not just that, but when you look at the game strategy of the entire board, how many players do you have? You have the Gulf
Right.
monarchy, you have Israel, okay, and then you have Iran, which is backed by China, Russia, okay. Now, when you game it out, you have the United States, Israel, and the Gulf monarchies, okay. So if the United States wants to call it quits, okay, then that leaves two other players that can pull the United States back in. You see what I'm saying? So it's like
Right.
if Trump wants to come out, okay, then all MBS has to do is attack Iran again. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? And then Iran attacks them, the United States gets pulled back in, or for that matter, Israel can do the same thing, where then Israel will attack when the US calls it quits. You see what I'm saying? And then so you have these three players that can escalate either way.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, you have this triad going on where if Trump escalates, okay, that's going to punish the Gulf monarchies,
Sure.
right? And then the Gulf monarchies can fire back, and so you have like a vicious
Right,
sort
and
of
just if you
like
just look at the complexity of that little triangle there and the risk associated with any one of them, it's a disastrous spiral waiting to
right. You would
happen.
have to right in order for this to uh, say come to a peaceful resolution without assets being destroyed. You would need all three of those parties
To
involved
come
in
to
that
accord.
war to right all come to the table at the same time
Yeah,
without any funny business or whatever. And then there needs to be reinforcement mechanisms to assure that everybody makes the compromises necessary. Do you honestly see that happening with Trump, Netanyahu, MBS,
no, not even close. And
and
so that's why
right,
I think that oil
right,
reacted the way it did. You basically have his little address here, and then pretty much just a solid rally ever since. Little bit of what I call a dragon head pattern here.
right,
That's just it consolidating and kind of finding a fair price, like before another bull rally. But basically, this is since the 25th of last month. Um, I mean, like I said, up into like we said earlier, up and to the right. That's you don't have to be a financial analyst to see that this is a very bullish chart. Just to note, if you see all these red lines here, they do look kind of messy. They're not supposed to be that dense. What I mean by that is on a typical day for oil, right? We can expect something more like this, right? It'll typically hold, anywhere, actually not even that. It'll typically hold a range of like 200 ticks, maybe. What does that mean? It's $2, right? Well, as we see
right,
here, 83 and 113, that's $30. That is 3,000 ticks. That's over 10 times the volatility that we typically see on a daily level. So that's why just you see all these red lines here. They're not supposed to be like that. It's just we're seeing so much of the chart because it's
right,
rallied so much. I mean, look here down here again, I repeat, $83 versus 113, and what we were considering normal trading was like back here again. We just see all this
oh
spatter
yeah,
of red because the
yeah,
activity, right here, we're talking like late February was only when we were starting to get into March and all of this, nonsense in the Middle East happened, that we really saw this part here. This is what we're supposed to be seeing. So if we zoom in on that,
right,
you'd see that the levels are going to be a lot more reasonable. And we've
mhm,
effectively doubled, just about,
yeah,
right? So we were in the 70s. Now we're 116. I don't foresee this retracing anytime soon.
no, no,
Not significantly anyway, and not sustainably, especially with Iran flat out saying that the U.S. is just no longer welcome in the Hormuz at all. I
Yeah,
don't think they're going to back down on that, and I don't think any amount of firepower or any negotiations are going to change that.
right,
So it's time that the U.S. started looking at, as we said last time, onshore. Maybe start trying to work with Venezuela. The issue with Venezuela is it's dirty oil, so to speak, and I've heard this from multiple sources who are in the know on that. It's very difficult to process. So even if we did, it's certainly not something that we're going to snap our fingers and do overnight, right? So I
right.
don't think that this situation with oil is going away. And frankly, I don't know about you, but I'm looking at, 113 is actually a bargain price as
Yeah.
opposed to a high price, right? So I have
I
been
have it at
following.
140. Actually, Danny, sorry to cut you off, but the math I did showed the real fair value of oil now is about 140, 145.
Well,
That's so that even this is, you
that's what I'm
know,
saying. So,
yeah.
if I have been following oil since 2014 or so, so these levels are very, very old, and as you see, it only goes up to 132. So since I've been trading
Mm,
oil, or at least following it and commenting on it, as you see in my Twitter, this goes back almost a decade. Um,
mm,
that this is as high as it's gotten. So I definitely foresee even 132. I still see as a reasonable quote unquote price, but right now I
right.
think are bargain prices because I just don't see the fact that the markets are pricing this in. And as we mentioned in the last stream, how I talked to financial planners who their attitude was just like, it'll pass. It's like we might get a little bumps and bruises, but nothing to see here. And we had mentioned earlier on how folks like us, we understand geopolitics and science. So, for example, when COVID came out, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, this is going to be
Yeah.
terrible. And everybody's
Mhm.
just going about their daily lives, right? Well, it turned out it was, cataclysmic. I kind of see this as that type of situation. Like people just aren't pricing in the gravity of the situation here. Even when you see a chart like that, you go outside and gas is $1 or more expensive than you were paying last month, um,
Mhm.
I still think it's a bargain, to be honest.
Yeah, that's why I mean this is even actually before all this happened. Just when I saw assets were being moved into the region, I sent out emails and called friends and family, and I'm like, get as much gas as you can, and food, non-perishable food, and stock up because this
Yeah,
is just
and again, not
really
to sound alarmist, but if you think about it, it's only a matter of time before these huge fuel prices impact trucking and shipping and our logistics. So you're going to see that reflected in the food in the stores in general. May
yeah.
even see a run for supplies like we did during COVID. We're lucky, of all things, it was toilet paper, but you could see it being a lot more serious. Now, here in Florida, we're kind of used to having a nice supply just because we have a very real situation that happens every summer, and that's hurricane season, right?
Hmm.
So it's like here in Florida, we just understand that it's good to have, some canned goods lying around just in case. But I think, if you're not having like a month's worth of supplies at least, then you might want to get on that, get some canned goods, get some soups, get some of those little Coleman Bunsen burners just in case, right? You never know.
For me, I mean, what? Look, I mean, look, I people may have thought I was paranoid before COVID, which is, I mean, whatever. But I don't. If people call you a prepper, I never really quite understood the psyop that's going on, saying, you know, like what was the Boy Scout
Always be
motto?
prepared.
Ah, how that turned out from being a virtue into being a bad thing. Where if you're it's like, oh, you're prepared, that's a bad thing. I never I that just never made sense to me. But at heart, I'm sort of I'm a survivalist anyway. But people call me a prepper. I look at that as like a virtue, and I don't see how there's anything wrong with wanting to insulate yourself from external shocks and
Sure, and that's
volatility.
exactly what this is.
So,
I think it's going to be an apocalypse or a doomsday. I don't think so. I hope not, but I certainly don't think so. However, I do anticipate a shock to affect the markets in such a way that they're not preparing for it at the moment, right? Because like I said, these prices, talking to multiple cross-referenced with talking to people in the industry, several of them, not just one, and their attitude on it. Again, just don't think it's reflected adequately here. So what we're trying to do is just prepare ourselves in terms of, setting up for to make a couple ticks off the end of the world and make sure that our friends and family are prepared as well.
well, what I've done is as you know, what I've done is, I mean, you can pull up, Permian Resources, Occidental, all of those. Any excess that I've made, any profits, I've just converted into, every month I do gold and silver
Yep.
personally. That's what I've been doing. Any profits I've taken from, Coterra, Permian,
Yep.
uh,
Speaking of which,
OX,
Oxy's up here still hanging around highs.
right? You see those
Tiny
dips?
little bit of a retracement, but nothing
Well,
significant.
I got pissed after I did the second dip you see there. I did take profits right before it dipped down the second time,
That's cute.
uh, and then got back in because
Yeah,
I figured out that Trump every week was doing this thing where he was manipulating markets,
sure.
where he would tweet something to talk down the prices, and then after that first dip, I was like, oh, this is what he's doing. So I
Yeah, I
took
got your memo.
profits. Yeah. So I took profits the second time, and then got,
Similar little dip here
yeah,
in Coterra as well.
right.
Still quite a bit ahead. I think I still have a lonely little limit order sitting here at 28.84, but I
Yeah,
believe
I mean, if you go back 2, 3 months ago, that's when I got in. So
yeah,
you can seeing this
right,
ahead of time how much you can make, and then all of that I've made, every time I took profits I just got gold and silver.
right.
So you know
Good strategy there. Just comparing that to the rest of the markets, we see, again, pretty far from our up and to the right. Um,
what is
and
that?
this is
That's
just the S&P. This is the S&P index.
oh yeah,
Kind of looking like we're trying to bottom out here. We might try to make a little breakout and test upper levels here in the
yeah, that
6600s,
that
but
that
we're
ain't
going to
gonna
be
happen.
facing headwinds, right? Especially when when the markets realize that this is a sustained. The prices are oil prices are here to stay for a while, right? I think
Well,
that
not
that's
just
when.
that. I told you, Danny, in the United States, it takes time for uh, because you're looking at the futures market.
Right.
So again, that's prices that are made ahead of time,
Yep.
and there's a lag when it actually sets for delivery.
Yep.
So as we talked about last time, in Asia, a place like South Korea, Japan, and so forth, they've actually put export bans and already they're the Philippines,
Mhm.
South Korea, Japan, they've been in an emergency situation, right?
Sure.
Uh, where you can only they're forcing people to take public transportation. You can only work 3 or 4 days a week, so on and so forth. Now, the timing of this is it takes time for that to hit the U.S. just because of the transport. What I said though is when you're talking about getting refined products and deliveries, between April 15 and April 21st,
Mhm.
okay, that's when we're actually going to have physical shortages in the United States. So that's when I told you, I was like, look, you know, it's not too late, especially in some of the stocks I've been playing personally.
Mhm.
Like there's others, I'm sure, other plays you can have, but we haven't even, despite oil going up, we haven't actually experienced physical shortages
Right.
yet in the United States. So gas prices are high, Wait till the physical shortages actually show
Yeah,
up.
when it just flat out runs
Eh,
out.
right.
But
So yeah.
on
So
that
yeah.
note, I think it's probably a good time to wrap up.
Mhm.
Maybe if you're not busy on Sunday, we can kind of recap what kind of shenanigans happened over the week and maybe how we could set up for that week. But
Now I did want to ask you
yep.
before we head off. I was trying to figure out, like, with Coterra, Permian, and a lot of the Permian Basin, uh, there are some interesting differences between like Coterra and Permian, though, in that I believe Coterra actually does deliver to Asian markets. You see what I'm
Yeah, I
saying?
think that
So
maybe
long
next time we're
term,
going to have to do a little
yeah,
detailed breakdown
yeah,
about the markets that they serve because I'm just not
right,
prepared to do that at this point.
sure.
And
But
I think that
my
that's going to help
question
really set up for some great opportunities,
My
as
question
this
is
situation
aside,
evolves.
yeah, but my question is aside from going off of Trump's tweets and with oil still being low, at what point do we look at those plays and be like, all right, it's done? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I don't know where that
Where
ceiling
the
is.
upper bound is.
Yeah, I have no clue.
So I think that, well, again, we need to start figuring out what their exports actually look like and what that delta could be when factored in. And there's also
Mhm.
some technical plays that we can make with the Fibonacci extensions, which, as we know, that's one of my favorite tools and a very good way to project upper targets. But the
Yeah.
extent to where the max upper bound is, I think, is anybody's guess.
Okay.
All we can do is we could portend price targets that are actually pretty reasonable. I have a pretty good track record of doing that, and look at the fundamentals and see what quantities they're shipping and to where, and do it that way too. Attack it from two
Okay.
angles.
So now, is this going too overboard though? Me actually working out the volumes in the Permian, right? And like the exploration
Oh
potentials.
no, I think that that's
Is that
that's what we need to be doing. Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Okay, I just because I don't
No,
want to put in work if that's
no, no,
pointless.
no, no. This
Right.
is what we need to be doing. Yeah.
All right. Gotcha.
Awesome. All right. Well,
Okay.
I guess we'll reconvene on Sunday and toodle pip.
I love you. Bye bye.
Bye.